Welcome to our lecture series for the Human-Centered Design Bootcamp. In this video, we will be talking about the ideate phase. Ideation is the fourth phase of the human-centered design process, and it's all about generating ideas. So far, we have focused on understanding the problem throughout the understand, empathize, and synthesize phase. We have completed our design research, gained empathy for our stakeholders, redefined the problem, and discovered opportunities for meeting our stakeholder needs in new and novel ways. Now it's time to start creating solutions to help us accomplish those goals. When at all possible, we must generate those solutions with those we are serving in order to meet their needs and identify and solve the problems that matter the most to those stakeholders. So, what is ideation about? Ideation is all about focusing on idea generation and quickly coming up with lots of ideas. So, how many ideas can you and your team come up with? At this stage, we begin translating problems into solutions. We focus on idea generation to explore a wide variety and large quantity of ideas that go beyond the obvious solutions to the problem. In the last phase of the design process, synthesize, we adopted a convergent thinking mode. This is when we processed all the information from the first two phases and we generated insights and crafted a specific point of view. From that point of view, we created several variations of how might we questions. This whole thing was a process of convergence. But now it's time to move back to divergence. You use divergent thinking in the early stages of your creative ideation sessions, where it's important that you get lots of new ideas. At this point of the process, you should envision your possibilities as endless. This divergent phase is a time for disruptive and lateral thinking, where the quantity of ideas is more important than the quality. So in this stage, your goal is to generate as many solutions as possible for the problem at hand. Once many solutions have been generated, you as a team will select one idea to move forward for prototyping. In order to choose what solutions to create or which ones to choose from, we first need to answer these two questions. How can we create out of the box ideas that have the potential to create real impact? And what steps can we take to ensure that the solutions we are generating meet the needs of the stakeholders we are trying to serve? And this is what we will be focusing on answering throughout this lesson. But before we move into more specifics about ideation, let me spend a couple of minutes elaborating on what are the common barriers to creativity, what gets in our way when it comes to becoming creative. And there are three concepts that I would like to share with you. The first one is this idea of tunnel vision, especially when we look at problems with our expert hat. Because we are experts in some fields, we've been around for a while, we have a lot of knowledge. And this, in reality, restricts our creativity because we tend to look at things from that same old perspective that we built over years and years. Sometimes bringing up a beginner's mindset actually can help us to gain new perspectives and unlock our creativity. Also, the second concept that I would like to approach is that you should try to come up with ideas, not the perfect idea. We tend to look for that one perfect, immaculate, complete answer for all the issues that we are trying to solve. But instead, we should look at the different ideas, different components that could eventually get shaped into a robust solution. Whenever you are approaching brainstorming and ideation, don't think one idea. think several ideas. And over time, you'll be able to filter them, combine them, remix them into a robust solution that can have the potential to change people's lives. Third, and most importantly, the fear of judgment. We tend to be very protective of our own ideas, especially when our ideas are not that complete or solid, or we didn't give those ideas too much time to evolve. We tend to be shy about sharing those ideas because we are worried about being wrong or have our colleagues judging us or criticizing us or considering our ideas silly. But try to put those fears aside. Consider your team as a family where mistakes can be made and where you can learn and grow with each other. Don't let your fear interfere with your creativity. And remember, the best way to have a good idea is to have lots of ideas. And this picture was taken after a brainstorming session that was held with 43 people organized into 9 teams. And they were able to generate 797 ideas in 20 minutes. This gives you a sense of the quantity that we are looking after in a brainstorming or ideation session. So ideas are really like balls in a pool. The more you have, the more fun it gets. So let me share a story with you. And it's a story about this concept that creativity is a kind of work. So a few years ago, I got interested in design, and I had the good fortune to work my way into visiting the D School at Stanford. As I arrived at their design studio, oh, and I should mention that I've never been in a design studio before. So I found myself waiting for my colleagues who would join me for the tour visit of the D School. And as I was hanging out there, I was working on my own stuff, and I saw a guy sitting at a big table, a big desk in this kind of shared space, and he had a huge sheet of paper in front of him. And he's just there with his pen, and he's making boxes and he's doing little sketches and then a little box here, a little sketch there. And sometimes he was moving quickly, and sometimes he stopped and he was thinking. And I'm watching all of that happening with increased curiosity. But eventually, I'm so intrigued by what this guy is doing that I approach him and start to check what he's doing. And as I walk over to him, I notice that he's doing these thumbnail sketches. He's actually drawing the same thing, but just different ideas for the same thing. And it was a design of some kind of device similar to an ebook reader, but with different variations. So in reality, he was just making boxes and then filling them with some drawings. And this was like a high profile senior design studio. But it didn't seem to me that what he was doing was very high profile or senior. But anyway, he was designing these devices, where to put the buttons and the different shapes and all this stuff. So I decided to ask him, "Hi, what are you doing?" And he looked at me. He wasn't annoyed that I asked the question, but he seemed sort of confused because I guess he thought that the answer was obvious. So he said, "I'm designing." He didn't say anything else, and I didn't know the guy, so I decided not to continue the conversation, and I walked off, and I didn't think about it again. Then suddenly my friend who was giving me a tour of the D school arrived, and I went on with my own life. And it's surprising that every now and then that guy comes back to my memory. I've always been interested in creative thinking, in understanding how it works and how it's done, in reading about creativity, even from an artistic perspective. How do musicians and painters come up with ideas? And how do engineers or scientists do it? And periodically, when I read all these books about creative thinking, I think about that guy. And I think about that guy because his answer was the right one. The answer is that creative thinking is actually very simple. After some reflection, I realized that the word design is a verb. It's something you do. The word create is also a verb. It's something you do. It's an activity. When he told me he was designing, he was right. He was sitting there and working and thinking and actually coming up with ideas for stuff. That's just all that it is. He didn't complain about how he had creativity block. He was just sitting there and working. And I think that's probably the best advice that you can start from, that creativity is a kind of work. It's a kind of effort. You burn calories when you are acting creatively. It's not something that happens passively to you. It's not about a moment or a flash of insight. And if you think about it as a kind of work and all the other problems that people deal with, it becomes much simpler to manage when you are stuck on something. That's why creativity is hard. And it's supposed to be hard. If it was easy, everyone would be writing novels and making movies and making plays and designing amazing things because it would be easy. So when you are stuck, remember, now that you are facing a challenge and you don't know what to do, now you are actually in a moment where you have the opportunity to become a creative person through hard work. So commit yourself to taking enough risks so that you fail sometimes. If you are not failing, if it's not hard enough, then you are not doing something sufficiently difficult or creative. And one point I want to highlight is that all ideas are made of other ideas. Is there such a thing as a new idea or an original idea? For example, take two ideas and combine them together and see what happens. It might not be a good idea or an interesting one, but it will be a new idea, at least a new formulation. So whenever you are stuck, it means that you are no longer seeing things in components. So break them down into pieces and start combining them. And this little theory that all ideas are made of other ideas, we tend to forget about it because usually we hear about some new ideas presented to us as a concrete, solid thing. Usually there's some mythology about the person who came up with that idea through some flash of insight. And it came to them in a moment of brilliance, and we are told that no one had ever had that idea before. But we hear these stories and we romanticize what creativity actually is. And you can find lots and lots of examples. And in fact, I believe all examples of ideas are derivable. E equals mc squared, the theory of relativity. Well, Einstein did not invent any of the main components of this theory. He didn't invent the idea of energy. He did not invent the equal sign. He did not invent the notion of the speed of light. He did not invent squaring numbers. He didn't invent any of those things. What he has done, the significance of his work, was that he found a way to combine those things in a new way that had significant meaning. But this idea was based on other ideas. And here are a few things to consider when we are getting playful with idea generation. So try to have some fun with it, and you'll unlock some brilliant and outrageous ideas along the way. And ideation is a team sport. It helps to have diverse perspectives when you are coming up with lots of ideas. If you are working alone, find ways to pull people in because at the end of the day, anyone can ideate. And diverge a bit longer. Stay in the mindset of being creative, continue to exercise your creative muscles, and don't rush to convergence, to selecting, to judging. At the early stages of ideation, it's not time for decision making. You will have enough time to select the best ideas, but make sure you give yourself and your team enough time to diverge. And the brilliant and the ridiculous. It's often hard to tell the difference between what is ridiculous and what is brilliant, so encourage both. So let's look at some tools and methods we will be using during the synthesize phase. The tools in the ideate phase of the process are focused on generating as many solutions to a problem as possible. The goal of this phase is to use the how might we questions that you created in the last phase to generate many solutions using collaborative brainstorming. From there, the team will use criteria to select the most promising ideas. And at the end of this phase, all team members should be clear on one idea that you are interested in prototyping. And you are going to capture that idea through the idea dashboard. So let's move into brainstorming. Brainstorming is a great way to come up with lots of ideas that you would not be able to generate just by sitting down yourself with a pen and paper. The intention of collaborative brainstorming is to leverage the collective thinking of the group by engaging with each other, listening, and building on each other's ideas. Conducting a brainstorm also creates a distinct segment of time when you intentionally turn up the generative part of your brain and turn down the evaluative part. For many, brainstorm is the bread and butter of ideation. And brainstorming is a method design teams use to generate ideas to solve clearly defined design problems. And we used how might we questions as a way to frame our ideation and launch our brainstorms. How many of you have participated in a brainstorm before? And how many of you knew that actually there was rules you could use to make it more effective? So let's review these rules quickly before we jump into our own brainstorms. First, defer judgment. You never know where a good idea is going to come from. The key is to make everyone feel like they can say the idea on their mind and allow others to build on it. And don't worry, there will be time to select the most promising ideas later. Second, encourage wild ideas. Wild ideas can often give rise to creative leaps. In thinking about ideas that are wacky or out there, we tend to think about what we really want without the constraints of technology or materials. Embrace the most out of the box ideas. There's often not a whole lot of difference between outrageous and brilliant. Third, build on the ideas of others. Being positive and building on the ideas of others takes some skill. Instead of challenging someone's ideas, try saying yes and try to build on an idea to make it even better. Encourage positivity and inclusivity because it can lead to a ton of great ideas. And fourth, stay focused on the topic. Keep the discussion on topic, otherwise, you can diverge beyond the scope of what you are trying to design for. Divergence is good, but you still need to keep your eyes on the prize. And fifth, one conversation at a time. Your team is far more likely to build on an idea and make a creative leap if everyone is paying full attention. This can be difficult, especially with lots of creative people in a single room, but always think about the challenge topic and how to stay on track. And sixth, be visual. Nothing gets an idea across faster than a sketch. Remember, stick figures are people too. In Brainstorm, We also put our ideas up where our team can easily see them and hopefully become inspired to build on them. Use colored markers and post-its, stick your ideas on the wall so others can visualize them. And we don't need long speeches or paragraphs to communicate our idea. Capture only the essence and make sure it is as clear and succinct as possible. And last but not least, go for quantity. Aim for as many new ideas as possible. In a good brainstorming session, up to 100 ideas are generated in 60 minutes. Brainstorming is a time to diverge and go wide. So crank the ideas out quickly so later you can find the most promising ones to move forward. And when it comes to brainstorming, your physical space matters. So, how does this room look like as a room for brainstorming? Try to identify what is wrong here. Well, actually, this is not a perfect room for brainstorming for a number of reasons, and I'm sure you identified many of them. The first one, there are too many chairs. People would be sitting, and when you are sitting, you have less energy. Actually, brainstorm works much better when people are standing up. Also, there seems to be no place for sharing your ideas because you can't see each other's work. Even if we are writing things down or sketching up an idea, because we are so far from each other, there's no quick way for us to share and build on someone else's idea. Also, there is some people left on the back. There are some chairs that are not in the main table. And we want to give equal opportunity of participation to everyone during the brainstorming. And finally, this seems to be quite a formal place. And that formality kind of blocks our creativity. So try to aim for spaces that are more lively, more informal, where you can feel more creative. So be mindful about the space in which you conduct a brainstorm. Make sure that there is plenty of vertical writing area. This allows the group to generate a large number of potential solutions. You can see in this picture, we have a big wall where we have space to put out a number of our how might we questions. Then all ideas are captured in individual post-its and put up so we can all visualize and build on each other's ideas. Make sure that everyone is standing and close to the board. A good rule of thumb is that all members of the group should be able to reach the board in 2 steps. Also, make sure each person has access to sticky notes and a marker so they can capture their own thoughts and add them to the board. Once they place the idea on the board, they should say it out loud to enable others to build on that idea. So the only thing you need is a wall, a lot of energy, and some post-its and Sharpies. And a good analogy reflects the story about the relationship between popcorns and ideation. So when you microwave a bag of popcorn, you have to wait in silence for the first few kernels to explode. And then the whole bag erupts. And in the end, the pops become fewer and fewer, and you have to remove it from the microwave before you ruin the batch. Although the ideation process might seem similar, so in the beginning we take some time to have some ideas, and then we gain momentum, and then at the end, the pop starts to become more sparse. Now, the most important thing I know about ideation is that you need to keep it going until it's really over. Too many people stop ideating before the brainstorm is actually complete, and they miss out the peak of it in its entirety. The brainstorm isn't over when you have one good idea. It's over when you can't think of any more ideas at all. But let's see a quick video that showcases how experts actually do it. So let's watch.
All right, team. Thanks for coming for a brainstorm today. We have a really interesting topic. The local zoo, the visitors are down 20%. So how might we boost the number of visitors to the zoo? This is a serious problem for them. They want to stay open. They need more funding, all this kind of good stuff. So let's spend a few moments now first and get a few ideas down. Remember, we're going for quantity. Let's see how many ideas we can get. And also, there's so many good ideas out there. Let's push ourselves, try to get closer to the ridiculous. That might be brilliant. All right, so I'll start us off. I had date night. So, and you might hang out with the animals that are in action, if you know what I mean. All right, what else? What else you got? Oh yeah, what do you got?
What if we do a dress up like your favorite animal day? So it's like a costume themed thing.
Very cool.
What about zoo pop-up at places that kids frequent, the mall, school, parks? Home Depot, I know, has programs for little kids to build, like, you know, birdhouses and stuff like that. So it could be all these different crafts, but they're sort of animal lessons, so
Love
kids
it,
learn.
love
And
it. I have a night camping, so you get to camp overnight there. So let's get a 5 or 10 more.
So I figure loyalty cards work for airlines and for burritos, so why not have it work for the zoo?
Building off the whole celebrity thing, what if like we pretend that animals are celebrities and we give out like a gossip magazine as an advertisement?
So for an hour every day, they vacate the cages, and you get to go swing on the bars and everything that the monkeys have. So it's zoo turn playground.
That's awesome.
What we'll do next is we'll look at these and look for some themes and cluster a couple. And then I think we should even prototype 1 or 2 of these and then take them over to the zoo. It's gonna be great, a lot of fun. Thanks, guys.
nice.
Now that we understood how to conduct a brainstorming session, it's time to learn about the 2 phases of ideation. Ideation is comprised of both divergent and convergent thinking. Divergent thinking is creating and generating numerous choices. Convergent thinking is narrowing down and zeroing in on a handful of very specific choices that are most likely to solve the problem. During divergence, we generate and collect as many ideas as possible, even the craziest ones, without judging their feasibility. And then, in a completely separate stage, the convergent stage, we evaluate and categorize and critique them. The reason for this is that good ideas usually don't seem good right from their initial inception. They need a little time to flower, like a child who needs to be protected from the elements before they can survive on their own. Once you generate hundreds of different ideas, how do you choose which ones to work on first? How can you make an informed choice? What are the tools you can use to help you? Your brainstorm probably generated a ton of ideas. And now it's time to harvest that brainstorm so those ideas don't just sit there on the board. Selecting an idea is straightforward for some brainstorms, but when ideating design solutions, give some thought to how you actually select ideas. Carry forward a range of those ideas so you preserve the breadth of solutions and don't settle only for the safe choice. There are a number of methods that can be used to help you select the ideas you want to advance. What's converging? Converging after idea generation. Well, converging is about focusing, not settling on what ideas are simplest to execute. We don't want to select those that are the easiest to implement. So don't rule out ideas that might seem too edgy or risky. We want to make sure we are selecting those which has more potential for impact. So you shouldn't converge too fast. And there are numerous methods that you can use in order to select the top ideas. So what are some examples of converging? Well, one example would be your dinner. You decide what to eat for dinner every day. You might start with a ton of ideas, noodles, meat, pizza, soup, but then you choose what you want to eat. You might end up selecting noodles at your favorite restaurant. So, a couple of tips when converging. Don't rule out ideas that seem too edgy or risky. In the selection process, don't narrow too fast. Don't immediately worry about feasibility. And hang on to the ideas about which the group is excited, amused, or intrigued. An idea that is not plausible may still have an aspect within it that is very useful and meaningful. Let's look at some examples of different selection techniques that can be used for convergence. One of the most known methods for idea selection is post-it voting or dot voting. So you write all of the ideas in individual post-its as you've done during the brainstorming, and you will give all participants the same number of votes. You can give 3 to 4 or even 5 to each participant. But what is important is that everyone gets the same number of votes. And then participants vote by using stickers on the ideas they like, as you see in the picture. This way of independent voting allows all team members to have a voice. And this is what it looks like after going through divergence and convergence. You end up with the few ideas that your team might decide to take on forward. In this example, the team came up with more than 70 or 80 ideas, and by dot voting, clearly there was one idea that was the winner that took 4 votes. It had more votes than the other ideas. This method is a quick way for the team to converge after brainstorming. You can also use multiple voting categories, where you use contrasting selection criteria to preserve innovation potential. This method encourages you to hang on to those crazy but meaningful ideas. Elect 1 or 2 ideas for each of your predetermined categories: the safe bet or rational choice, the long shot, or the most meaningful to the users. You can also use an impact effort matrix. What is an impact effort matrix? An impact effort matrix is a decision-making tool that assists people to make choices analytically, where each potential idea is assessed based on the level of effort required and the potential impact or benefits they will have. By plotting each individual idea into this matrix, you can clearly filter out the ideas that should be your focus, probably the ones that sit on the first quadrant of high impact, low effort. And finally, you can use design criteria. Remember that case study from the incubator? Even before brainstorming, the team did define the criteria of an ideal solution. Design criteria is an expression of the ideal solution. It describes the ideal qualities or attributes of a great solution, but not the solution itself. Your list of criteria can come from your grant requirements, your team desires or values. In a way, the design criteria are the compass to help you take informed decisions based on a scorecard. And here is an example. In this example, the team identified criteria such as usability or cost less than $200 or self-sustaining or scalability. And then what you can see on the right side, the team judged and compared their 2 main ideas across these different criteria. And that gave them a scoring that allowed them to select idea 2 instead of idea 1 based on very precise indicators. Now I'm going to introduce you to the concept of idea dashboard. So once you landed on a particular idea that you are excited about, you can use the idea dashboard to further develop your idea. The idea dashboard tool helps your team to summarize the idea you selected and the outcomes you hope your idea will create for your stakeholders. The idea dashboard is this worksheet that allows you to simply articulate what your idea or solution is. And capturing a few details on this sheet can help you think through some of the basic details of your idea. There are four main questions that we hope to answer through the idea dashboard. What? What is your idea? What is your solution? What is your intervention? Who? Who is the presumed beneficiary of the solution? Are you designing for teachers? Are you designing for students? Who are you designing for? How? How do you imagine this idea might be implemented? And who will implement it? And why? Why do you think this solution is going to improve outcomes for your stakeholders? So here are some tips to make the most out of your idea dashboard. Make it self-explanatory. Make sure that you don't need to pitch it for someone to understand your concept. And ugly is okay. Nobody here is an artist. If your drawings seem a bit rough, that's totally fine. And words matter, especially when using a tool like the idea dashboard, where you don't have much space to write. Pick and choose your words carefully to make sure that they convey your main idea. And give it a catchy title. We all like to be seduced by inspiring titles for our ideas. In conclusion, ideation is often the most exciting stage of the human-centered design process. During ideation, the team generates a large quantity of ideas that ultimately get cut down into the best, most practical, or most innovative ones in order to inspire new and better design solutions. Thank you, and see you in the next lecture.